All right, everybody, welcome back to Kado Games. We are here, the mics are hot, and we are going to be talking about some Disney Lorcana. And I have a very special guest with us today. It is Rebekah from Rebekah Quests. How are you doing?
Hey there, I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, it is a pleasure to have you on. Why don't you tell all of our listeners real fast before we jump on in a little bit about yourself and your content and where they can find you.
Yeah, so my name is Rebekah, but I go by Rebekah Quests everywhere online. And I started, I found out about Disney Lorcana right when it was coming out at the release time, August, September of 2023. And I'm a huge Disney fan. I had a teeny tiny bit of TCG background from when I was growing up as a kid. And so I jumped in full force, started an Instagram account, and I love making content that's geared more towards the Disney fans out there, people who are newer to TCGs, families, and just creating like a really positive space for people to learn more about the game. And I do like funny skits and, try to bring a lot of humor and levity into the space. And it's tons of fun. I've connected with so many people over on Instagram doing that. And have grown the account. And this community is so wonderful, connecting with people, and eventually it kind of led me into a role on the official commentary team for the Disney Lorcana challenges. So I've been a part of that. And the last, year and a half has just been such a wonderful experience growing with this game and the community. But that's where you can find me mostly, is over on Instagram, just having fun.
Yeah, that's good. That's the point of having hobbies, is having a good
right?
time.
Yes, exactly. I always say, like, if I'm not having fun and laughing, then that's when I'll stop.
Yeah, what are you doing with your life?
Exactly.
So right off the bat, we want to let people know we're recording this in early February. So by the time it comes out, there's going to be some new updates, new spoilers, new news, but we still want to have a really fun conversation about Disney Lorcana, the new set, the cards that have been revealed so far, and just kind of the process of playing Lorcana, collecting Lorcana, things we hope for. So first of all, let's kind of jump into you as a person and a player and a collector.
Yeah.
What are you collecting for Lorcana at this point? Like, what's your favorite color? Is there a theme? Is there something you particularly enjoy for your personal collection?
So what I've done is I really do like collecting just a master set, not including enchanteds. I haven't gone that deep into it yet, but I love having at least one of every single card for every single set. Like, just having a complete set of every card. It fills up the binder and it makes me happy. So that's my collection right now, which I have so far. I've accomplished that through all the 6 sets that we have so far.
Do you include cold foils in that, or just the regular?
No, just regular. If I can I put the foils in as I can, but just so it's a simple collection, but complete. So yeah, if I could do cold foils of everything, that would be amazing. If I were to ever like dive into like a more like complete collection, I would actually probably go back and focus on the first chapter and try to get a foil of every first chapter card. That would be like the next like deep dive collecting thing I would probably do.
Okay. Are you going to branch out into foreign versions of Lorcana? So like, Japan, China.
And or there's like the French and Italian cards too. With the new though market into Japan, that my son actually, so he plays and collects with me, and he's 15, Caleb. If anyone follows me on Instagram, have seen him pop into some of my videos. He's actually learning Japanese in school. He loves Japanese. I'm actually part Japanese myself.
Really?
And so yes, not that you could tell by looking at me, but my grandma was 100% Japanese. So I'm a quarter Japanese. And so we are going to try and collect some of the first chapter Japanese cards. So I already ordered some. They haven't arrived yet, but I'm excited to get my hands on some of the Japanese cards. And then for my son too, I think it's going to be really cool because he's learning the language, for him to use the cards to practice and learn and everything. And that'll be really, really fun for him.
Oh, that's so cool. Okay, so I'm also half Japanese. So do you speak it, read it,
Oh,
both?
no, what's interesting is my grandmother, she is the only one of her siblings who married someone who was not Japanese. And, in the 50s, it was whatever my granddad wanted to go in the house. And so a lot of the traditions of the Japanese culture actually didn't get passed down because it was kind of what he
Okay.
wanted to have in the family. So, which makes me really sad a little bit. So we do have like some things from her that she kept, like wedding gifts that were sent, from their family in Japan and stuff. But as far as like traditions and language, a lot of that was kind of lost, but it's still part of our heritage, and Caleb, my son, like really embraces that side of him, I guess.
That's
And he's
so
like, I'm going to
cool.
learn Japanese in school. I'm like, you go for it. If you want to, go for it.
Yeah, that's super cool. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Favorite card in your collection. Doesn't matter what
Okay.
rarity.
Yes.
Like the one you would, if there's the theoretical situation, there's a fire just in your
Oh,
card room for some reason, you have to pull one card out to save it.
one
What's
card.
what's that card?
I it's the Enchanted Ariel from Ursula's Return. And that
Ah,
was my chase card, and I wanted to get it so badly, but I never pulled it and I never went out of my way to like buy it or anything like that, but I always wanted it. And my son for Christmas, actually, he took he had some cards that had some value to them, and he, unbeknownst to me, traded away some of his cards that were his to trade, and he got me the Ariel Enchanted for Christmas, which was so sweet. It was so sweet. And that card is just, I love Ariel. She's like, as far as like favorite characters go, definitely from when I was a kid growing up, that was like The Little Mermaid was like my movie in my childhood. And so that card, I love the art. It's so beautiful. And that's definitely, it's the one card that I actually have like up on display in my room. And I would definitely grab that one in a fire for sure.
that's cool. I can definitely tell there's a lot of love and excitement when it comes to like that card in that story because oh man, that's so great. That's
Yeah.
such a cool story.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was really surprising. He's very sweet. He's a 15-year-old teenager, and sometimes, teenager boys will surprise you, and that was definitely a surprise.
That's so wonderful. So, what are you playing? What is your favorite color combination? Not necessarily like tournament style or set champ style, but like you sit down with some friends, you're playing some games for fun. What are your two go-to colors?
So, if I am playing a little bit more competitively, I do tend to gravitate towards Ruby Amethyst. I have tried other decks, like different play styles, aggro and tempo and discard. I do not like, and I just always and the songs. I don't like the songs for like the Amber Steel song. I've tried it so many times, and I just kind of always come back to a more control style deck. It's just really fun for me. I do like that, but lately I've really enjoyed making. This isn't really like a deck, but theme like film theme decks, so like I have a Robin Hood deck that's really fun, an Aladdin
Ooh,
deck that is like killer. Actually, my Aladdin, that might be my favorite one that I'm playing right now. It's an all Aladdin deck, 100%, no other non-Aladdin cards.
oops, all
it's
Aladdin.
it's Oops, all Aladdin. It's Ruby Steel, and it's especially in multiplayer. It's got all the cards that like steal lore, from your opponent with the big, outlaw Aladdin shift and Jasmine that every time she quests and thievery. It's just it's such a mean, fun deck.
So
It's
let's talk a
fun.
little. Oh yeah, that sounds real. Now, do people target you like when they start seeing you steal lore? They're like, all right, we gotta take
Yes.
this deck down.
Yeah, with especially in multiplayer, and because otherwise it can run away real fast, and so it's definitely like let's stop Rebecca.
Oof. Before we get into the Dual Ink announcement from Lorcana,
Mm.
which I'm really excited about, I want to talk a little bit about your history with trading card games. So, where did you
Oh
initially
yeah.
start with? Since you've used lots of terms that newer TCG players are going to go, what? What's tempo? What's
What?
control? What's that? Yeah,
Right.
what are these terms? So, like, let's establish like your history and kind of your background and expertise with trading card games.
Yeah. So I when I was in middle school, so now everybody will know how old I am. I was in middle school, maybe 6th grade, 7th grade when Magic the Gathering first launched. And my parents actually almost had their hands on the alpha set cards,
Oh,
but they missed it. My mom always tells a story about how my sister and I were being unruly in the store, and so she left and didn't buy it, and went back the next day, and it was all gone.
oh.
um, but they had their hands on, I guess, the beta set. So
Hmm.
really early in Magic, my parents started playing, and they taught us both how to play. My sister wasn't so interested, but I loved it. I started learning how to play Magic. We would go over to my parents' friend's house and play almost every week. And I would play with friends at school. I was the only girl I knew who played Magic. And so all the guys would, invite me to like their Magic, get togethers. And my friends that were girls were always like, how come Rebekah gets invited? I'm like, well, learn to play the card game. They'll invite you. And they were like, no. But I loved it. I thought it was so much fun. I really enjoyed learning how to play. I'd never got into it like super competitively or anything. It was mostly just socially. But I had a black and blue deck that I just loved so much. It was really
Oh.
fun. Um, and I called it a bruiser deck because, black and blue. So I played for, quite a few years in middle school and high school. And then I kind of stopped playing games, not games in general, but like trading card games. So I stepped away for quite a while. And then, grew up, got married, had kids. And when my son got older, like 6, 7, 8, probably like 7, 8 years old, I was like, oh, he's at that age now where he could like learn how to play Magic. And so I like dusted off my old, because I still had like all my old cards, and taught him how to
Oh,
play a little bit. And he
cool.
really enjoyed it. And so that was really fun to like introduce him to Magic. And then when Lorcana got in, so we kind of played, here and there a little bit, him and I playing Magic together. But then when Disney Lorcana was announced, I was like, okay, now you're talking, because I love Disney and I do love Magic, but like as a card game, but there's not really, for me, there wasn't like a connection with like the stories and the characters and the art. And so that was what really drew me into doing Lorcana. So I had that background though of knowing how to play a TCG coming into Lorcana, which I think really, really helped me. But like knowing how many people don't know, like just some of the basics. That's one of the reasons why I started doing content, was because I'm like, there's so many people out there who I know would love this game, who are Disney fans, who like board games or other card games, but it can feel daunting and really complex to pick up a game like this. And so how could I help break it down into like its most basic form to help people who don't have that background to come into this game and learn how to play? Because if they can grasp, just the basics, I know they're going to love it. But it can be hard if you don't have someone, if you're just on your own trying to learn a TCG like this, it can be difficult. And so anyway, that was a long story to say, that's my background with TCGs. And now I ended
Yeah.
up here.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's piggyback off of that for a moment and talk about that onboarding process, because you're right. A
Yeah.
lot of trading card games have a really, really bad stereotype of, it's a bunch of smelly, fat, overweight dudes who are just pretty terrible. You walk into a game store, it's going to be some kind of like alternate dungeon that's just horrid.
Yes.
And unfortunately, most of the time, that's not true. Every once in a while, some game stores are basically somebody's basement, but the average game store is a legitimate business trying to sell
Yes.
products.
Yes.
So when you hear YouTubers talking about like, were you around when there was that magic butt crack incident at tournaments? Do you remember that?
No.
So
No.
there's a gentleman. So I'll preface this: Magic tournaments have before this happened had notoriously been pretty lax on standards. So your hygiene was not critically important. Your clothing that you wore could be offensive. It was just not really
Mm,
taken care of. So someone in the
sure.
community who was pretty upset with all this went to a GT and took hundreds of pictures behind people playing with their butt cracks hanging out.
Oh, but oh
Yeah.
boy. Yep.
And he had this like blank stare, and he was like, either pointing at the butt crack or just like staring into the camera lens, like, what's going on. And so I uploaded this, and he was banned from Magic events, not because he did
Oh my
anything
goodness.
wrong, but the Wizards, or either Hasbro or Wizards, they were just like, this is bad. But it kind of went viral. I think it even got on some news channels that Magic tournaments are gross, and so they
Wow.
really brought the hammer down. Like, you got to pull your pants up, you got to use deodorant, standard stuff.
Sure. Right. Yes.
So yeah, that kind of helped alleviate that stereotype of you have to wear clothing and smell fresh and brush your teeth. So yeah, I do understand the premise of game stores are a scary place. So what do you do that you found successful that's helped onboard people to show them, trading card games are fun, game stores are fun. Most people in communities are pretty okay, and Disney Lorcana is a great jumping off point to get your foot in the door and kind of experience a combination of, Disney IPs that people love, plus trading card games that people might be interested in, and kind of mesh that together into a really positive experience for people who just want to try it.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's so much that goes into that. I think, from the get-go, you need to have somebody walk into a store in the first place, and that can often be difficult for people when there is some of those stereotypes that you're talking about. Especially, I think for women, it can be difficult, to think, oh, I'm going to go walk into this store and I might be the only woman or one of the only women there. And so it can be difficult just to walk into the door in the first place. But it takes a whole community, right, to create the space where people will feel welcome. And so that's each person doing their part. And I like to think that I am part of that, but it's not just me, right? So in the store that I go to most of the time, I think one of the advantages that my particular store has is that it is a female-owned or partially female-owned business. And so that, I think, does help with making sure she really wants the atmosphere to be very welcoming to all people. And the staff that she hires is really intentional about making the space welcoming for all people. And with that, then that trickles down then into the community, and people being just really positive and welcoming when there's a new player who walks in, saying hello, even just like simple things like that. One of the sticky things that I have seen that does make it a little challenging is when you have a store that with a lot of highly competitive players who want to practice, for the next upcoming set champs or LCQ, or DLC, whatever may be coming up. And you have somebody who's like, hey, I just bought this starter deck and I want to learn how to play.
Yeah.
How do you balance that? And that has been a challenge at our store. So our community is not perfect by any means. I don't think there is such a thing as a perfect community. And that's something that we've talked about. Like, how do you make space for every kind of player at no matter what level they are at skill wise or how they want to engage with the game. And it's really encouraging to hear other people talk about their stores and what their stores are doing to make the space welcome for all kinds of players. And I think it really does just take a lot of intentionality, not just from the store itself and whoever is running your weekly league, your tournaments or everything, but it takes all the players in that community to be like bought in to the idea of we are here to create a space where all of us can engage with this game in the way that we want. And so I'm not saying it's easy, but it's definitely something that every community has to work on and figure out. Generally speaking, though, I've always had a pretty positive experience with people coming in who are brand new and, you know, having like, I'll bring extra decks with me that are just like, you know, super fun decks. And, you know, so if I'm playing against a newer player, I don't want to come in and just like demolish them, you know, because that's not fun. They're just learning how to play,
Right.
or people who know how to play the game and they just want to come in and play a fun princess deck, you know. Sometimes I want to do that. And, you know, I think that it just takes some intentionality on the part of all the players to say, we're going to come in here to have fun and make space for everyone. And I think for the most part, that's what we see. And from what I hear, other players talking about how the Disney Lorcana community is, broadly speaking, compared to some other card games out there, it really has, over the last year and a half, been developing one of the most welcoming card game cultures out there, which is really, really wonderful to see. Like even just yesterday, I went to a set championships that I was playing at, and I was talking with one of my opponents, and he was saying that the store that he usually goes to is mostly like families with kids, like parents and kids that all come together to league and play together. Like that's just so wonderful. I love that, you know? So yeah, I think it takes everyone doing their part though, and intentionally making the space. Like having a welcome community doesn't happen by accident.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I'd love to pick your brain since you've been in Magic communities and now you're in Lorcana communities. What are the main differences you see between those two groups?
Well, I couldn't speak really to Magic communities so much, I think, because I was mostly playing socially and not going to like a game store on a weekly basis. So I was lucky, I guess, that not that I didn't experience anything bad in Magic or anything, but it was all for funsies, right, with my friends. And so my experience with Magic was probably a little bit different in that regard.
So more casual at home.
More casual, yeah. So like at school, at home, and I would go into card shops to like buy stuff, but I never participated like in organized play with Magic. For me, I was, like I said, I was a young girl, and that was very intimidating to me, the idea of going into a store and playing. I did not want to because it was mostly all men and adult men who were playing at the stores. And so the few times that I did go into game stores, like to buy stuff and like we would see events going on, I was like, oh no, this is not the space for me. So I guess maybe there I could speak to that, is that it definitely didn't seem like a space that I was belonged, right? It didn't seem like a space I belonged in.
Yeah.
And that is not ever something. I've always felt like Disney Lorcana community was a space that I belonged, and I definitely want other people to always feel like this is a space where they could belong. And so I think having, you know, even simple things like, well, it's not a simple thing, but Ravensburger inviting me to be a part of the broadcast team, to have a female in, you know, that kind of public face of this competitive thing, I think is one really wonderful way to say, like, you belong here, right? Like, it's not just all men that are here. So I think belonging is what everyone wants. Everyone wants to feel like they belong in a space. And I will say that I never was a part of any Magic community because I didn't feel like I belonged there in the first place.
Okay. Very, very understandable. But I think it's a good perspective that
Yeah.
people should feel welcome in the hobbies and games they love, and
Hmm.
that's important. People should not feel ostracized
Absolutely.
based on any variable or any factor. You should be able to play games and have fun and make friends. That's
Yeah.
important.
And I think that the Lorcana community overall has done a really wonderful job with that. That's always been my experience, at least. And in any community, you're going to have things that happen now and again. And hopefully, when things come up, people learn from that and can do better themselves if there was something, that they were a part of, or that if there's behavior from a player that's unacceptable, that we say, and we did have that actually in Lorcana at my store where there was some unacceptable behavior and they said, you're not sorry, we do not accept that behavior in this space. And so we're going to kindly ask you to not return. And I think that that's sometimes what you have to do to make a space safe for all people.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the new stuff that's coming out with
Yes.
these dual ink cards that just got announced.
Yeah.
So, first of all, what are your thoughts? Tell us all of the things you're excited about, what you're most interested in. Like, what are you jamming on with this new announcement?
Well, first of all, the thing that I'm most excited about is that I get to say I was right. I made a couple of reels on Instagram that I put out that speculating, theorizing, putting my little tinfoil hat on and saying, I think dual inks are coming. We saw the Bolt artwork announced at the European Championships, and there was some clues there for sure. And then we saw the lady card from Lady and the Tramp. And the moment I saw the art for that picture, I was like, okay, there is no question to me. I don't know how much you have delved into like the art of Lorcana and the shape language and all of that.
Oh, yeah.
But I was like, she's wearing a harness that's amber shape language and her headband is emerald shape language with those colors. I'm like, there is no doubt in my mind. And then there were some other pictures on the website as well that had some other clues. And if there were not dual ink cards based on what we saw in those art pieces, I think I actually would have been more shocked if they weren't dual ink cards. So, but I'm very excited about the idea of introducing dual ink cards into the game. I think it's going to make deck building really fun, really creative. And I love the idea of, we don't know exactly how they work yet, right? So this is some speculation because we've just been told dual ink cards are coming and here they are. But logically, it follows that deck building rules say that you can only have 2 ink colors in your deck. And so if you have a dual ink card, that means it can only go in a deck with those 2 ink colors, right? So Lady is Amber Emerald. She could only go in an Amber Emerald deck. She couldn't go in an Emerald Amethyst deck because then you would have 3 colors and you can't do that. So limiting these new cards then to a particular ink combination, I think is going to be really, really interesting. Right up until this point, any card that we've gotten that was really exciting and really good, you could use it in any combination with that color. You could put it in, a ruby card could go in ruby amethyst or ruby sapphire or ruby, emerald or whatever. But now with these new cards to say, nope, you can only use it in this ink pairing, I think is going to be really fun. So I'm excited about it. And I hope that the effects, and we can talk specifically about the cards that we've seen so far, that the effects on these new cards are going to be like really, really cool and interesting. And they seem like it so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And we want to put out a disclaimer for those who are listening. We are recording before the February 10th announcement, where we're going to get more news, more spoilers. So as of right now, we have 3 cards, and we're going to make some fun guesses as to what happens. And then by the time all that news comes out, oh, Rebekah, we'll have to have you come back on, and we can kind of recap and go, all right, where were we
We
on the
were,
scale? Yeah, were
yes.
we way off? Were we in like, treasure planet galaxies off, or were we, right on the dot? But yeah, that was the first thing I wanted to bring up is the dual ink. So this is known, this is public information. Let's talk about that. So people are speculating, if a card is dual ink, you can put it in either color, and you're saying that, you can only have it in a color combination of what's printed on that card. So why do you think we have dual ink cards? So let me use a little bit of Magic and then a little bit of Lorcana.
Yeah.
So in Magic, traditionally a dual color card gives you flexibility to bring in colors into your primary deck. So for example, you and I both play Control, so Dimir, black and blue. So you could see cards that would have black, blue, or like black, blue, and red. You would see these like half symbols where you could play a black mana or a red mana or a blue mana, whatever. So that way,
Right.
this card can be slotted into other decks out of color to give a player more options and more tools to deal with what might they be playing against. So in Magic, multicolor is a freedom to give you as the player more opportunity. It would appear that in Lorcana, it's the inverse, where dual colors are meant to be restrictive, but the card's overall effect can be much stronger. So I want to hear your take on this, since you've played both. You understand the concept of most games that have multicolor is like, hey, you could do more. Lorcana is not as much.
Yep. Yeah. It's almost like putting like some guardrails on your deck building that you can only, this is such a cool card, but you can only use it here. Instead of, like you said, in Magic, it's like having more freedom in deck building. What I'm curious about with Lorcana, if our speculation is true and that it is going to limit the decks that these cards can go into being just in those ink pairings, I'm really curious to see, when you look at the game overall, and, Steve Warner has been done quite a few interviews talking about, from a game design perspective, how they balance the game and make sure that, cards, that they don't break the game with any particular card. And I'm wondering how much that these dual inks will kind of play into that with like deck archetypes, right? So how can we say, this deck, like Ruby Amethyst, let's say, is a really, really strong, deck, and it has been since day one, and it probably always will be. But okay, and Emerald, Amber maybe hasn't been as strong, but could we introduce a card here that's limited to just that ink pairing that would make that deck archetype maybe a little bit stronger to balance out the meta and make the gameplay more diverse in the decks that can be created out there, because we're introducing these new dual ink cards that will only slot into these specific spots, if that makes sense. So I'm really interested to see how that plays into it with what decks kind of, how once we see the whole set and how that affects everything, what new decks are really rise to the top. And if that really, I feel like, especially in this last set, the meta got really diverse. There were a lot of strong decks, but there are still some decks out there that have never really quite found their groove. Cusco not helping them out with his groove. And could a new Duel Link card really help some of those decks to like rise up a little bit and be a little bit stronger in the meta overall. That's what I'm really interested to see, and I'm curious to know if that's kind of why they're introducing them in the first place, is to have these specific tools that can be put into these decks for that reason. And maybe not, but I think it's a really interesting way of doing it with limiting the deck building, and if these cards are, have effects and abilities that are really interesting and strong enough, then players will figure out how to build around them. So we shall see. Also, do you think, here's a question for you, on the Jafar card, it refers to illusion characters, and my speculation is that that's what these dual ink cards are going to be called. All the other cards are called glimmers, and I'm wondering if the new dual ink cards are called illusions for some reason.
Yeah, that is a good question. I've also seen the speculation that there'll be like illusion items and illusion other templated cards. For Jafar, it's a good question. So the only reason I don't know if that's the case is it's not in the, what's that bar underneath the name that has like the types, like Dreamborn,
Right,
Villain,
it's not one of the classifications. Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like based on the way Lorcana has been built and templated over the year, they would have classified that a card is an illusion, just because they've done really well at keeping a lot of I think in Magic it's called like memory text out of the game, where you have to like remember a keyword or a card type based on what that card does. Most of the cards have been very clearly labeled as, an action, a song, an item, a location. So I'm going to assume that there are characters that are illusions. Now, I think they might be like tokens from Magic.
Oh, okay. Nah, that's an interesting thought. And that definitely is something I know that people have speculated might be coming someday in Lorcana, is something like tokens. And especially with this new set being really, it seems like pets are going to be a big theme.
Yeah.
That's a really introducing a new card type that's an illusion. That is a very interesting idea, and I could get on board with that. That would be fun.
I feel like they're going to be like low to the ground, like 1 or 2 drops, and you can either like hard cast them from your hand, or you'll have characters that say, if you play this card, you can create an illusion. Because in Magic, if a token leaves the battlefield, it's just dead. So I feel like this could be a card that can act as a token. Or there's that new vanishing keyword where if a card is targeted by an effect, they're banished. So
they're banished.
Because the Jafar we're talking about right now, if an illusion character is banished, instead of going into your discard pile, it goes into your hand. So it wouldn't necessarily be a token in terms of Magic where you create just a blank vanilla card that has a stat line on it, because that wouldn't go to your hand. You don't have any like casting cost on it. So it has to be a card with a ink value. But I mean, it's a great question. I feel like we'll see after February 10th cards with that moniker of either it's a archetype, or it's got illusion character in the effect text that probably has vanish associated with it, which probably or it might have something like, if I had to guess, just pure guessing, maybe it's something with a really low cost, a really high stat line, and then at the start of your next turn, it goes into your discard pile. Do you remember like Ball Lightning from Magic in Red, where it was like a triple red 6/1 haste, and then at the end of your next turn, if it's not gone, you just destroy it?
Yeah.
So something that's like really overstated, but you only get like 1 turn. That's it.
One use of it. Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Interesting.
But it also says
Yeah.
your opponent has to banish it on their turn, so they probably wouldn't do that because then it would just go away.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it probably doesn't have that moniker, but yeah, it probably has some kind of downside. Would probably vanish. Probably vanish.
Yeah. Yeah. So the text. So anyone who's listening, it's during an opponent's turn, whenever one of your illusion characters is banished, you may return that card to your hand. Yeah. So yeah, some kind of character that is an illusion, whatever that may be, that can be banished by your opponent.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Interesting.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
I wanna play devil's advocate real fast, and let's speculate that the Dual Link cards can be played in either color. It probably isn't.
Okay.
I agree. It
Okay.
probably is, if it's, two colors, you can only put it in that deck. However, what if it isn't? What if they announce these are like multicolor cards that can go in A or B?
Yeah.
What do you think? Is that a bad thing? Is that a good thing? Because from the current perspective, it looks like a floodgate kind of protection of we're going to make these cards really good, but they're forced to go into this one archetype. I'm on the other side of I'm very much in love with deck building more than playing. So I love seeing
Ah,
things that could open up deck building where it's like, this Jafar can be both. Well, which
right.
color am I going to put him in? Because you're right, it would essentially be like 2.5 color. And that I do agree that could also be kind of wonky if you have like, let's say a ruby sapphire. And then you have a card that's ruby amethyst and then a sapphire emerald. And it's like, oh my God, there's like 6 different colors in this deck. So
So
like it
many. Right.
probably won't happen. But in terms of deck building, I like the idea because it sounds like fun.
Yeah. The other thing let's say that were the case, and it still could be. We'll find out on February 10th. One of the things that I think would be good about that, or that I would appreciate, is that in Disney Lorcana, the way that they've designed the game is each of these, and it's the same way in other card games too. So each of the inks, right, has like its own personality, its own
Color
like
identity.
there are some the color identity where like there's certain keywords that you only see in one or two of the inks, or this ink you always kind of see this kind of thing happen and the characters do this kind of thing, and you don't see that very much or at all in this other ink. And that if it did present you with a bit more freedom in deck building to introduce these dual color ink cards into either ink on the dual card, then it would be an interesting way of kind of introducing some of the ink identity from, like Jafar is amethyst steel, and having, a bit of that amethyst ink identity coming in, the abilities that usually you would only find in amethyst, but then being able to bring that into a steel whatever deck, steel emerald deck, let's say. And so that is really interesting because I think there definitely are some abilities and effects that you only see in one ink, and that players would love to have it in a different ink pairing. And so that would present some really interesting deck building. A lot of, I guess, like what you're saying, if for people who love deck building, you could get very creative.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of player expression, and that's a big reason I love Magic is as long as you have the right mana in your deck, you can do whatever you want. Now, if you misbuild
Right.
your deck, that's a you problem. But the game basically is a sandbox of here's all the cards, do whatever you want, figure out your permutations, figure out your ratios, and have fun. And that
Yeah.
attracts me to any kind of game if they go, here's your sandbox, here are the tools, have at it, do what you want. And it's really fun to find weird, unusual, unorthodox decks. Generally, because I mean, you're a caster, you've seen this. The meta game for a given anything is usually pretty rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yep.
don't
Yep.
generally go into a game and see, oh, there's 20 different decks. That's incredible. Usually it's like, here's the top 3, here are the outliers, and then here's like that one rogue deck. So it's like,
Right.
less than 10. And as a
Yep.
competitor, I understand it because we generally go for high efficiency, high output, high impact. And there's only so many permutations that can do that without making the game so watered down that it's boring. But
Yeah.
you can still, with the right game design, find a place for the competitive players and the creative players to have really good matchups, because now you're siphoning not only player skill but deck knowledge, pilot skill, interpretation, prediction. There's so much that goes into it. And so although I'd still agree, I think it's probably going to be these cards are locked to that color. As a deck builder, I would love to see Lorcana allow people, this is a magic term, to splash additional ink
Mhm.
colors into a deck. So that way, if you're just a super hardcore X and Y player, but you really, really want that Z ability from a specific ink, you
From another
you
ink. Yep.
yeah, you could essentially you're covering weaknesses by utilizing that third splash. So that way, if your deck doesn't draw cards particularly well, cool, splash in some X, splash in some Y. Hey, my stat lines aren't really good for challenging. Cool, splash in some, one, some two. So that way, in my opinion, that kind of deck building opens up the meta to
Yeah.
so many more options and so many more variants of a deck, because you could see a amethyst steel deck with three variations, and it's very fun to watch people kind of explore that range and showcase
Yeah.
what these colors can really do.
Yeah. And I think we're starting to see that a little bit more already with having some variants within ink pairings.
Yeah.
And as the game grows, it'll just be more. And then with these dual ink cards, I think you're going to see it even more. And I know that some players say that makes it really hard then to know what to prepare against. But for me, I'm like, that's really exciting. And that's, I think, really great is to have a lot more variants. So like, when somebody says, "Oh, I'm playing Amber Steel," you don't exactly know, well, is that going to be a standard Amber Steel song?
Yeah.
Is it now Diggy Diggy Hole? Is it some other like aggro Amber Steel version? Like, and I think that that makes the game a lot more exciting.
Well, it also challenges the player to
Hmm.
know a lot more. So
Yeah.
if your shell of a deck is 99% the same minus one or two cards, it's not really a tough matchup if you've studied here's what the deck is, here's what the cards are, minus, this 4-drop, this 5-drop. But
Right.
once the game gets to a point where you've got multiple subtypes within an archetype of, you know, talking about Jafar, you've got Amethyst, you've got Steel. So you could have songs, you could have control, you could have aggro, you could have mid range. Now you as the player have to play around potentialities. You have to be more in tune with, okay, what is their curve on turns 1, 2, 3, 4? Because
Hmm.
if it's a control deck, they're gonna miss drops 1 and 2. They'll drop something on 3. They'll drop removal on 4, etc., etc. So for newer players, I do agree. It is a little bit more challenging because you're going from I only have to know the top 5 decks to I have to know the
Right.
top 5 decks and the 3 permutations within
Plus
those decks.
all variants. Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, for competitors, I like that challenge. As a casual player, yeah, that is annoying. I do agree. I don't want to have to memorize 15, 20 decks. And then, maybe it's some weird hybrid that someone came up with of like, oh, it's a little bit of this and that. Like, I don't know what to do here. Because there's no way to tech against all of that. You have to just take what you can and do the best you can.
Yep, as best you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think no matter which way it is that, the duel links go, whether it does present more freedom, more limitations with deck building, or at least limitations on how these particular cards can be used, I think it's gonna I mean, I don't know that it will completely shake things up, but I think it's going to be really exciting and interesting no matter what.
Oh yeah.
I know a lot of people out there were like, "Oh, it's too early in the game to introduce dual ink colors." And I'm like, "Oh, it's fine. This is going to make it fun." So, either way, I'm
Yeah.
really excited that they're introducing this. I know. And then, of course, we have that new keyword that we saw as well. So I think there's definitely going to be some really, really fun things coming in this set. I think there's also a really fun storyline that's playing out, with the lore of Lorcana, with Jafar and all of that. So that's going to be fun to see how the story progresses. So I overall, though, these Duel Link cards, I'm excited no matter what they bring, and they do seem really fun.
Yeah, I completely
Well,
agree. Okay, go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say which one is your favorite of the three that we've seen? Jafar, Lady, and Belle.
Oh, late lady by far. So,
Lady, mine too.
well, so going back to Magic, blue black. For those who don't know, blue is a lot of control, black is a lot of removal and recursion.
Mhm.
So, you and I could get along really well as Japanese blue black buddies.
There you go.
I
Yes.
I love control and I love recursion. So the term recursion means usually something's in your discard pile in your graveyard. You've used it, you've expended it, or someone's destroyed it. And recursion allows you to bring that card back into play via either it goes back into your hand, it goes onto the battlefield, however. So essentially, you turn your discard pile into a second resource. And
Resource. Yeah.
you're able to utilize cards that normally aren't available if you're playing in a different color. So in Magic, like white doesn't reanimate, red doesn't reanimate, green sometimes does, black primarily is the color of
Yeah.
death and reanimation, like zombies. So I'm very much a fan of, hey, I've got my hand, I've got my battlefield, I've got my ink zone, and my deck, and my discard pile as a
Hmm.
zone to utilize as a resource. So I also love Lady of the
Yep.
Tramp, but anytime a card
Ah,
says you can
yeah.
interact with your discard pile, it's like, how can I build around this card? What can I do here?
What can I
Especially with
do?
that
Yeah.
Lilo that allows you to play her out of the
Oh,
discard pile. It's like, oh, so we've already got a recursion deck where it's like you can bring back Lilo. Now you can bring back
yeah.
Lilo 1 from set 1. So you could just have like really low to the ground, aggressive, like one drops just cycling. That's wonderful.
Yes.
Oh,
Oh, that's
you thought
wonderful.
you cleared me out with your board wipe there. That be prepared. Well, this lady says otherwise.
Otherwise, right? Yep. I'm just gonna bring these cards back.
I
Yeah, I
mean, can
think
you imagine?
she's my favorite.
Yeah. Also, I like in terms of artwork, they nailed it. She is like this card is gorgeous. I'm a big fan of full arts when it comes to trading card games. I would
Yeah.
love to see a like full art, no text, no nothing, just the art because this is well,
Yeah.
it's so beautiful. Like the shadows are great, the color tone is great. It's just a really well designed like artwork card. Not
Yeah.
even talking about
I
stats.
yeah, I agree. I think the colors are great. This is the kind of card from an artwork perspective that always I keep on saying this. I've said it forever, but I know someday we'll get there. I hope. But I'm like, this is one of those art pieces that really makes me want like a coffee table art book of Lorcana art,
Oh, take my
like an
money. Yeah,
oversized. I
yeah.
exactly. It's like we
Take
would
my money.
all drop, so much money to have that. And I want to see these. I want to see full art. I want to see like concept art in there too, and I want to see some
Yeah.
stories from the artists and
Ooh,
everything. Like
sketch
I
art would
think
be
a cop.
cool.
I mean, oh, right, like sketch art and concept art. I think would
Yeah.
be so amazing to see, and it's art like this, like the lady. When I saw it, it's so beautiful, and it's like artwork like that. I hope that they in the future, not just like a coffee table book, but I know people would buy like art from the game to put up on their wall,
Yep.
like
Oh
they've
yeah.
done such a wonderful job, and getting so many wonderful artists to be a part of this game, and all of them doing such justice to these characters and films that we know and love from the Disney canon. And we just want more. That's all. We just want more art.
Yeah. Yeah. Something you got to give them credit for. Have you played or seen any of the like anime trading card games where it's just like
No, I
screenshots from the
haven't.
show? Okay.
Oh,
So
no.
the biggest complaint a lot of people have for think about like One Piece. You know about One Piece, the anime. Do you know
Yes.
anything about that? Okay.
Yes.
So there's a trading card game, and like
Yep.
99% of the artwork is just a screen cap from the show. There's like not very much
That's so
unique art.
funny.
So it's kind of cool because a card is representing a scene from the movies or the shows, and it's like, okay, I remember this, but it's not always that great. They've come up with some more like custom art, but I love the fact that Lorcana is all unique art.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
all like brand new art, and it is challenging. Like I do agree. Like so, from a business side, it's a lot cheaper and easier to screen cap a frame out
Oh,
of
sure.
pre-established art and just print it. Whereas Lorcana has to commission artists, they have to do hundreds of cards. They've got to get these, months, if not years in advance because art is not fast. So like there's a business aspect to it, but I love the fact that not only is Lorcana a fun game, but it's you like legitimately collectible because you can't find this
Oh,
art
yeah.
anywhere else. It's unique.
It's so unique. And Disney, as like a, you know, fandom, right, is so huge.
Mhm.
Like people love these characters and people love the animation and the art and everything. And I don't know that they could have gotten away with doing it
Oh,
otherwise.
screen
Um,
caps.
and could you imagine? No. But I think that that's one of the wonderful, like, I was talking before about, different people want to engage in this game in different ways. And people who are just in Disney Lorcana who don't even play it and just collect the cards because of the art. Like there are tons of people out there who are just purely collectors because the art is gorgeous and they're Disney fans and love the art. And it's really the collectability of these cards, I think, can't be underestimated. I mean, especially like when you take into consideration like all the enchanted like full art cards that they do. Like there's just
Mhm.
so much for collectors here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's start to analyze these cards since we've talked about them so much.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Let's
let's
take
start
a
with
closer
Lady.
look.
So this is
Okay.
a 5 cost card, non-inkable, 4 power, 4 toughness. What are the terms in Lorcana? I keep forgetting for Magic. It's
Strength and
strength,
willpower.
yeah, strength and willpower. So you've got green, yellow, so amber, emerald. Shift 3, so you can play this card on top of another character named Lady for 3 ink. The ability is called Something Wonderful. When you play this character, you may return up to 2 character cards with cost 2 or less each from your discard to your hand, and she can quest for 2 lore. What do you think? What are your thoughts?
I I think she's really fun. I think the fact that you can shift her on 3 is pretty great. To have a 4/4 character out who can quest for 2 on turn 3 is pretty awesome. And then, so even that on its own, I think is really good, which makes sense why they make her uninkable. Because if she was inkable, that would be like way too good. But this
Nuts.
ability, I know. Could you imagine? Like, yeah,
I could. I
it
could
always makes
imagine
me
it.
mad. It always makes me mad. And of course, it's emerald. That's like the joke is that the good emerald cards are always uninkable.
You're not wrong.
But this ability that she has, though, I think is really great. Like we were already talking about the recursion, bringing 2 characters, cost 2 or less, back to your hand from your discard. I think is great. I can easily see this in, you know, mostly up to this point. I think we've seen it in Amber decks with a lot of like the Lilos, like the new one and the one from set 1.
Yeah.
There's that Stitch Rockstar, where
Yeah.
if you bring a character out with cost 2 or less, they can exert to draw a card. I mean, I can just see Lady really being a strong card in some of those decks. I'd be interested to see like what in Emerald you would pair this up with to make it, a fun deck. Cause I don't know, like with the Stitch and, um, like some of the other decks that are really focused on a more like low to the ground version. I don't know
Yeah.
that I've seen
So
Amber paired with Emerald so much.
let's ponder this one. So currently we're control players, so we like be prepared. such a great
Yes, I
tool.
do.
So your opponent is playing, very aggressive. You play, be prepared to slow them down because their board state is 0. I am of the opinion that Lady is a good mid-range card because
Hmm.
if your opponent is at 7 ink, you're probably pretty close to 7 ink, if not maybe one above if you went first.
Hmm.
So say you're at 7 or 8 ink, you can hard cast Lady for 5 and then bring 2 cards back to your hand, which at that point you should be able to pay for. And they're probably going to be very aggressive cards. So, maybe you get like 2 set 1 Lilos, slap them down the board. Your response to a be prepared is, I've got 6 lore on deck. Do you have another be prepared?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is very aggressive.
The thing that also comes to mind for me is it's like a Tremaine coming down right after Be Prepared. I know is one of my favorite moves to make because oftentimes your opponent will only put down 1 card after Be Prepared.
Right.
But like a card like this, if you could play Lady and then play another 1 or 2 small characters out of your hand, well then yeah, you're presented with like exactly what you just said. Do you have another Be Prepared, or what are you gonna do?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you usually once the be prepared comes down, you're at a 1-to-1 trade of, okay, I wiped your board,
Yep.
you play something, I play Tremaine, you lose something, so I'm up 1 to
Yep.
0, and then you
Exactly.
kind of snowball. But Lady, so this is something I love about recursion. This is my biggest thing is it gives you a mathematical edge because most of the time, actually, if you're playing Ruby Amethyst, the control deck, you are playing out of hand. Your resource
Yep.
options are your hand. That's it. This deck is playing from hand and graveyard or discard pile. So you've got the cards in your hand and you've got access to whatever's in your discard pile. And
Whatever's there.
that be prepared just fed me. You gave me more options if you're running Lady, of course. So I've got a secondary hand of, oh, here's a bunch of 1 and 2 cost characters. Lady, go fetch me whatever I
Go
need.
fetch.
Yeah. And so I can either play Lady plus 2 1-drops or Lady and a 1-drop and a 2-drop. And oh, you played a Lady Tremaine. Okay, cool. Here, get rid of my Lilo. I can just bring back from the discard pile anyways. I don't care. And so you as the control player lose your tempo and you lose your like,
Mhm.
efficiency because you're trying to trade that 1 Tremaine for my like 1 powerful card. It's like, I don't know, you can have my 1-drop.
Right.
I don't care.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I think she's going to be real fun, Lady, and I'm excited to see her in play. And I think the 4/4 on her is really great, and the fact that
Yeah.
she quests for 2, I like. I mean, really, the only downside to me is the fact that she is uninkable. Everything else about her, I just love.
Yeah, I'm hopeful. This is something I do want to see with more sets. I want to see more impactful cards. Uh,
Yeah.
early trading card games, it's just a thing where you have such a small set of cards that when a new set goes live, you're only as a competitor. This is purely speaking from a competitive side. You're only really looking for the meta impact cards that can take the decks that are good and enhance them, or
And
cards
better.
that
Hmm.
push a deck archetype that wasn't viable to a place that is viable. So
Yeah.
it's not uncommon for even in Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, and Pokemon for a set to come out with here's like 150, 200 cards, but only like 5 or 6 are actually desirable. I would love to see, especially with Duel Link cards, more things come out where maybe 10 to 20 cards are actually going to see play and mix things up both at a play and a deck building level. I think that'd be cool.
Yeah. I was talking to another player recently too that was saying like it's been a while. It'll be interesting with this new set to see if we have more like build around cards or build around
Mhm.
combos because like you were saying, there, especially when it comes to like the highly competitive decks, you have each set comes out and people are just like slotting in like 1 or 2, maybe 3 cards from the new set to like make that deck better. And
Yeah.
it would be nice if this new set with these Duel Link cards kind of shook things up where people went, oh, okay, we have to like scratch that and start, new and have some creativity and see some new things on the table.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah. Lady gets me excited. I think she
Yeah.
could be a build around card.
She's fun.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, there's just there hasn't been a great answer to control. There's been some answers to control, and your healthiest game has a cycle of life where, control beats aggro, aggro beats mid-range, mid-range beats, or no, it's what is it? No, yeah, I think that is aggro beats mid-range, mid-range beats control. So
Mhm.
and if I'm wrong, you can, post in the comments below which what the cycle is. But the idea is there is no air quotes the deck. There are multiple decks that perform well in certain matchups and have a rougher time in
Mhm.
another matchup. Again, back to that rock paper scissors combo.
Rock,
You
paper,
you don't
scissors.
want
Yeah.
yeah, you never want that one deck that just dominates, and if you're not playing that deck, you don't get to play. That sucks. That's boring.
Hmm. That's never fun.
No.
That was the Bucky meta, if ever, if we all remember.
That little monster. When I saw that card, I was like,
Uh,
I feel like
oh
something's
no.
wrong here. Yeah, I was like, I've seen this before. It never goes well. But they fixed it, which
Uh,
is good.
they did.
All right,
They
do,
did.
do you want
Yes.
to do you want to do Jafar or Bell next?
Let's do Belle next.
Okay. Do you have her stats up, or do you want me to read them out?
I do. I
All right,
have
go for
her.
it.
So Belle is an inkable 9-cost character, 7/7. So quite a large character here. She's a Floodborn character, hero, princess, and inventor with shift 7. She quests for 3 and has 2 abilities. The first is salvage. For each item card in your discard, you pay 1 less ink to play this character using her shift ability. And then repurpose. Whenever this character quests, you may put up to 3 item cards from your discard on the bottom of your deck to gain 1 lore for each item card moved this way.
Wow.
Yeah. This I actually really love cards where you can just gain lore, like uncontested lore is
Yeah.
really fun. And so I love that second ability. And of course it's whenever she quests too. And so as a 7/7 character,
Yeah.
she's quite a hefty character there to have to deal with.
This is a target. Thank God this doesn't have ward. That would be insanely broken.
Oh gosh, I couldn't imagine that. But yeah, it's like,
Uh,
yeah, okay, I'm going to quest for 3 and then I'm going to move 3 items and get another 3 lore. So now I just went up by 6. Okay.
Yeah. I feel like we're going to see Popsicle and Flaversham come back because you can just
Oh,
dig.
yes.
Because now, so again, recursion, you want to feed your discard pile with items so that you can reduce the shift. So like if you
Mhm.
have 3 items in your discard pile, she's now shift 4. That's
Right.
a
Yes, because of that first
really,
ability.
yeah. That's a stupid
Yeah.
stat line for 4. If hey, I'm gonna shift for 4. Here's a 7/7 quest for 3. Also, I get another 3 lore, by the way, and those cards are back in my deck. What? Huh?
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
And if you have more items, it just reduces her shift by multiple. It's just she could shift for 3, 2, 1,
3,
0.
right. Oh
What?
man. Right? Yeah. I'm trying to think of in Ruby and Sapphire, like what is like
Because
a good shift target for
doesn't the set
Belle.
1 Bell for 3? She reduces items by 1.
Yeah, so she's an inventor as well. And is she 3 cost? I
I
can't
think
remember.
she
But
was from set 1 because you would just slap
yeah,
down a bunch of
3.
items either for
Yep.
free or for 1. So you like
Yep.
Popsicle or Ice Cube. It's just boom, 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 boom.
Oh, can you imagine? Wow. Which is, this is something that I always think is fun is when you have cards from previous sets that didn't really see a lot of play, and then you get some new fun tools, and then all of a sudden, like we saw this with the current meta with Maui Shark introduced into the game and Pirate's Life like
Yep.
coming alive all of a sudden. It's like,
Yep.
who was playing Pirate's Life before? Nobody. But
Nobody.
now everybody is. But like this Belle from set 1, Inventive Engineer, yeah, like nobody's playing her, but now with
That's
this
gonna change.
new fun card, I mean, goodness. Yeah, if you could see her, this new Dual Ink Belle come down on a turn 4, like what out there can deal with a 7/7 character on turn 4?
$20 bill, maybe. I'm gonna slip this
Right.
$20 bill. You just discard that card. Like, oh, I haven't seen nothing. I don't know what you're
Oh
talking about.
man.
Not nothing.
Yes.
Not much.
Not much. No. I also love that just like with the art, she's like the steampunk kind of look that Belle has going, which
I
she
want to know
also
what
had
that
it.
thing is she's building.
I
It's like a
don't
blimp.
like it looks like a balloon, yeah, kind of thing. Yeah, to go explore the realm of Lorcana. Um, but yeah, this card to me is kind of crazy. Like it'll be fun to see. And there's so many other cards, I think, with items that you don't see a lot of play
Hmm.
that it'll be fun to see if with this Belle, if it'll be breathe some new life into like those item decks.
Yeah. So something we could hopefully get to in the Ruby Sapphire combo is card draw. So there is the
Mm-hmm.
popsicle
Yes.
engine, which is
Right. But
really,
something,
really
yeah,
nasty. But
Flaversham, but
yeah,
that's
but
about it.
it's predicated on a multi-card combo because you need
Uh-huh.
popsicle, then you need
Yep.
Flaversham, then you have to kind of follow this like what's the word I'm looking for? Like a flow chart of okay, play popsicle, play
Yes.
Flaversham, sacrifice popsicle. Like there isn't just a
Yep.
card like Friends on the Other Side. It says just draw cards.
Just draw. Just draw cards. Yeah.
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 So if you're able to, this is something you could do in Pokemon, where you would thin your deck down. You would just burn through your entire deck, and then you have cards like Bell, where you just keep recycling items. So by the time you get down to the bottom end of your deck, all you're drawing are items. So you're
Oh.
getting rid of all the chaff to load
Mm-hmm.
the deck up with it's all items. We just recurred items. So you keep drawing items to then discard items to then play Bell to then put the items back and you just kind of have this like cycle. Currently there's no way to do that. There's not enough card draw, there's not enough speed. The deck is too slow. I do like what Bell's doing. I like that if you are building this specific deck, you could shift her very early on even if you don't
Mhm.
shift her early game, you can put a lot of pressure on your opponent by just playing 3-drop Bell, or if there's even a lower cost Bell that comes out, and your opponent has to look at that card and wonder, am I about to get hit with the 9 cost 7/7? I really like this Bell and Lady because something that I don't think has really been impactful is players looking through their opponent's discard pile. Now discard pile has value.
Yeah.
You have to look
Yeah.
because Lorcana is all about math. If you're sitting across the board from someone, they've got a Bell of any value whatsoever, and they've got 14 lore. You have to play around the fact that they could make 6 lore if there's 3 items in their discard pile. They could shift,
Yep.
quest, activate, repurpose, and you lose the game. So now
Yep.
you have to remove that threat. If you're not at 14, you've got a little wiggle room, but you still have to fear the
A little.
potentiality. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think we see it with the Ruby Sapphire deck even now, and even the Sapphire Steel deck with items. Is that deck is one that can swing real fast,
Yeah.
like with the Tamatoa or like the Aerial with Ward when you have a lot of items. And Belle does just that. She could swing a game really fast, like gaining 6 lore. With one quest, that's no joke.
No, that's almost half of your needed lore in
Right. Yes.
one swing.
In one
Like
shot.
that's pretty scary. I think from a player perspective, especially you do commentary, it's very fun to watch a board state go from they don't have anything, it's not very scary, to there's 2
Oh,
Bell
wait a
mechanic
minute.
extraordinaires and 5 items in the discard pile. Cough. That's a lot of lore.
Wow. Yes. Oh, wow. Yeah. That would be fun. Not for the person sitting on the other side of the table, but
I mean, I'll say if you've gotten to that point, you probably deserve to win the game.
yes. I mean, really, yes. Yeah. Yeah. She'll be a lot of fun, that's for sure.
So I do like the card. Now my only thing that might be negative, because I can hear people thinking about this. This card forces you to build a certain archetype. You have to build items.
Sure. Yes, definitely.
If you don't like items, this card means absolutely nothing to you. You
It
probably don't
means
want to.
nothing.
Yeah, it's like I
Yeah.
don't want to play items. Oh, bummer. It's a cool card though.
Yeah.
So I'm hopeful when we get to February 10 and beyond, we get to see these really powerful cards that enhance archetypes. Because the more we read about these cards, the more I agree. I think they're going to be locked to these specific colors just because they're so powerful, which they probably don't want
Yeah.
splashed into alternative colors.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we've talked through Lady and Belle already, and both of those cards to me are like some of the. I mean, not that we haven't gotten like super strong cards in the previous sets, but like for like to have, especially these. Well, I guess Lady is just when you play, right?
Right.
But Belle is every time she quests, um, and they're both shift cards, so they can come in early if you want, and they're just so strong. And yeah, it's going to be exciting, and I think limiting those kind of cards that are with these really strong abilities is smart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good way to gatekeep a deck from getting out of control.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah.
then the game's not fun if one deck just becomes unstoppable and it's boring.
Right. Yeah. I think the other thing that I like too about Belle that I'll say like with the items is there are lots of really cool items and some that are not great. But I think there's so many fun cards though in the game that don't see a lot of play that when you have a card like Belle that is an item focused deck, like you said, if you don't like items, well then this card's not for you. But this then presents a exciting opportunity for somebody to like bring out some like that Belle from set one we were talking about, or some items that haven't seen play, and bringing in cards that haven't been part of the game really, and bring them into a new deck that gets created because of a card like this, I think is really fun.
It's fun to see deck archetypes get some love,
Yeah. Are
especially
you an
since
item
items.
person?
Uh, I like I'm a control person. Like I'm all any game. I'm a control
Yeah.
player,
Yeah.
100%. I love the I'm a toolbox player, so I love the complexity of there's a million things I could do. What are the best options in this given scenario? Um,
Mm.
just because like no offense to aggro players. I don't like aggro because usually in terms of like pure mathematical values, usually you're trying to hit a curve and if you like miss anything, you just kind of
Hmm.
fall behind because you're always putting the
Yeah.
gas on the opponent. So it's like turn one, you play this, turn two, you play that, turn three. And if at any point you just miss a drop, it's like, oh, I'm so far behind, I can't win. uh,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I like slow play, not like slow playing, but I like being able to look at a board state and go, okay, this is what could happen if they have this card, but that's what could happen if they have that card. Ugh, which of these, what should I play around here?
Which do I play around? Yep. Yep.
Yeah, what's the worst thing that could happen, and how do I stop that from happening? Okay, we'll shoot for this. Let's see what goes down.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of it's fun. It's a little gambly, but I enjoy the gamble of oh darn they did have that card. Well, game two.
Right. Oh well. Yep.
Moving along. But yeah, I like the fact that the designers are very actively targeting deck archetypes and
Yeah.
acknowledging like this is a thing and here's a tool to enhance that thing. So from a player perspective, it would seem like they're listening to the players. They're keeping a tune on what people enjoy. And as long as it's not like overpowered, they're willing to invest resources into making deck archetypes stronger or at least more consistent, more powerful. And I think that's a good thing
Hmm.
that it's not just
Yeah.
here's random crap we're throwing on the wall, figure it out. It's like, hey, we know that there was that popsicle deck that people liked. Here's some toys
Yeah.
to, do some crazy shenanigans, but only in that color combination and only in that deck. So again, it's a restriction that powers up that thing, But if you like that thing, you're gonna love it.
You're going to have so much fun with this new tool. Yep.
Hmm.
And the other thing that I will say to you is neither of these cards that we've looked at so far seem overpowered to me. I mean, we'll see once people get their hands on it, but like they're strong, but they don't seem like they're going to like come in and break anything, right? So
Yeah, and
there's a nice balance there.
yeah, I like the fact that the official social media pages are starting the set with. Uh, it's hard to predict where they're going to fall in the power level since we only have 3 cards to pull from.
Sure.
But we've been doing this long enough where I think we can make a pretty educated guess of these aren't bad cards. We
Right.
don't know if they're
Super
set
rare.
defining. Yeah,
Mhm.
they're super rare, so
Sure,
they're
yeah.
above the curve. But I feel like if you're a person who's well versed in the game, you can look at these cards and go, there's a place for this card in this deck, and I'm gonna start like theory crafting right now. Not,
Yeah.
oh, that's a cool common Winnie the Pooh. I like the art. I'm never playing that. You know,
Mhm.
2/2 for 2 with 1 lore. Like, oh, cool.
Right.
Next, please.
Next.
Yeah.
Next card.
So last up is Jafar. So why don't do you have him up as well?
I do, yes.
Tell us all about Jafar.
Jafar, he is a 4-cost inkable character. Jafar, newly crowned in Amethyst and Steel, Dreamborn, villain, and sorcerer. He's 2 strength, 4 willpower, and quests for 2. His ability is This Is Not Done Yet. During an opponent's turn, whenever one of your illusion characters is banished, you may return that card to your hand. And there's also some flavor text here for Jafar. He says, now that the Hexwell crown is finally mine, no force in Lorcana can stand against me.
Y'all read that in Jafar voice, right?
Yes, I hope so. I can't do a good Jafar impersonation. That's for Baker. What's that?
Do you know who voiced Jafar? Because that is such a unique voice. Like, that is hard to mimic.
I don't think I do. I don't know.
That's fair. I don't either. But
yeah,
it's such an evil, like twingy, like it was
sinister.
amazing.
Yeah, so good.
But, like psychotic at the same time. Like this man is evil, but like totally
unhinged.
Yeah, that's a great word for it. Totally unhinged.
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely perfect. So this is one that's hard to speculate on because we don't know what illusion characters look like, and also for people who want to, sneak peek behind the curtain, we're recording this on a Sunday. I'm willing to bet 100% that Monday, tomorrow, the social media channels will show off a illusion character. It's like, oh, now we know.
Oh, okay. Right. That's usually how it happens. Yeah.
Darn it. We recorded this show, and all of a sudden, like all of these things we're speculating about are, totally revealed.
Yeah.
So let's use our knowledge of what we do have. So he's inkable. His stat line is not particularly impressive. He does not have shift.
Right. So, not a Floodborn.
Yeah, nothing. Like looking at this card at base level with the limited information we have, there's nothing really impressive. So we've got to presume that the power of this card comes from the ability, which would infer that there is some kind of downside to an illusion character we're not aware of. We don't know what, but it's probably something not particularly good. So being able to now let's put it at speculatory base level. Being able to take illusion characters that your opponent banishes with, let's say, a Be Prepared. Being able to put those all into your hand instead of your discard pile is pretty gnarly. Or
I love it.
Yeah, even if you use like targeted removal, like Dragon's Fire, you force your opponent to sack a character with Tremaine. Like there's so many tools that remove things from your field. And it's like that feels bad. If it's an illusion character, Jafar just throws it back in your hand. The flip side is we've seen a Dr. Facilier that has a similar-ish type effect, and he hasn't seen play. Now
Right.
the parameters are totally different, but we've seen a card that has a similar effect where things that are banned. What is it? What does Cecilia say? Banished in a challenge, I think is what it says.
Banished, yeah, I pulled it up. So it's banished in a challenge
Yeah.
specifically, where yeah,
So
Kujafar is just banished at
yeah,
all. So that could be like a
much better.
yeah, let the storm rage on. Your illusions got taken out, whatever those illusions are. So, which
Yeah.
I always love that when it's not doesn't have that in a challenge criteria. Um, that
Right.
always makes a card better. I love the Ruby Prince Eric. I know he doesn't see a lot of play, but when he's banished, you get to banish chosen character, right? So not having that in a challenge is
Right.
really nice on this card. But
He is
yeah,
inkable.
he is inkable. I don't like. I mean, we'll see how powerful or how instrumental the illusion characters. I had not thought about like the idea of some kind of token that you were mentioning earlier. I think that's total possibility. Who knows? And that would be really interesting. Jafar will go away to Brawl. Brawl Medusa.
Yeah.
Sisu, all of that. So yeah, that 2 strength is not really great. So I think the key here for Jafar, from my perspective, is what are illusion characters and how strong are they in the game that you would want to have a card like Jafar in your deck.
Well, the Sisu, like the cards you were mentioning, that's a good reference of there's theoretically there's got to be something good about him that he's vulnerable to so many different types of removal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That would lead me to, because they could have made him a 4/4 for 4. But since he's a
Yeah.
2/4, there's a lot of things that can take him out. So without knowing too much, like that's something you can look at with a lot of other trading cards is like, wow, this ability is really nuts. Why is his stat line so bad? Because you need ways to get him off of the board. Otherwise, he
Off the
just sits
board.
there. He's too strong, and it's not fun.
Yeah.
So
Very true.
I'm really really curious to see what illusion characters are, what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Or he could
Now
be
I'm going to be like
garbage.
thinking.
He could be just poo-poo.
Or it could just be nothing. Yes.
He could be your next bookmark in the book of choice. That's very possible. I don't think so. I think he's gonna do something fun.
I mean, if anything, let's say it is a poo-poo card. Let's say it's a poo-poo card. If illusion characters are something new that is introduced into the game, I think people are gonna have some fun and try it out for a while at least.
Yeah.
Like you may not see this in highly competitive decks if it is not a super great card, but I think people love trying new things. And so what's interesting too, I hadn't thought about this, is Jafar is one of the characters that we see on I think he's going to be in one of the starter decks, right? So
I had another thought.
Okay.
So Jafar's the prime villain for set 8.
8. Yep, the Reign of Jafar.
So this could be one of those things where in Arcasia's island, he's a setup combo piece where maybe again speculating, but this is coming from lots of other trading card games where you'll see a card, they have all these abilities and things that aren't particularly useful in that specific set, but then a set or two later there's support for illusion characters, and all of a sudden, boom, Jafar, newly crowned, is a staple in some kind of illusion shell for a deck. So we'll have to wait and see, but they're really, really leaning into Jafar being the villain for the next couple sets.
Right.
So
yeah,
it is a possibility that this Jafar is like a piece of like a 2 or 3 card combo. And well, again, there's so much speculation because this one word is holding us back.
I know.
We don't know
yes,
what is an illusion, but there's a lot we can extrapolate and guess about. But I think you really brought up a great point that there's so many removal cards that just take him off the board. So it's got to be something nasty. Because even if it was like one more pip of strength, he was like a 3/4. that changes things. Like,
I think it really does. Him being a 3/4, I think would actually make a huge difference in him being able to stay on the board longer. But being a 2/4, I think there's so many different removal options. I mean, the 4 willpower is not bad, but any quests for 2, which is nice.
It's acceptable.
He's a super rare. I don't. But to me, I'm like, just based on what we know, which is not much with that, but with all of his other stats and knowing that this illusion character ability is there, it almost seems like he's not there to quest, though, right? So that 2 lore almost doesn't make a difference. Yeah, he's just going to sit there on the board for his ability to bring those illusion characters back to your hand, so that even though he does quest for 2, is not like huge.
So we're starting to push on the 2-hour mark, so I don't want to stay too long. But here's some speculation.
Wow.
I know it's time flies when you're having fun. Which color do you think is going to be more illusion heavy, the amethyst or the steel, or maybe both? Like, what are your thoughts?
That's a good question. I mean, I would guess maybe the amethyst, because amethyst is like the magical ink, right? But also, like you were saying with Jafar and just like the storyline that we're seeing of his villain arc and all of that, is maybe illusion characters, we're going to see these across all 6 inks, and that it's going to be something that there are illusions across the board. I don't know. If I was going to put it in ink, I would say in the amethyst, though.
Yeah. So fun speculation. What if there's like a Dr. Facilier, like voodoo spirits illusion kind of deck? Because he's got, friends on the other side.
Oh, yeah. Friends on the other side. I think that, the Dr. Facilier cards are fun. Nobody plays them, but they are fun.
I would love to see a Dr. Facilier deck get some love. His design on Lorcana is so interesting, but there's not enough support to make it really function.
Yeah.
But, he's so cool. Such a cool villain.
Very cool. He is a villain.
Yeah.
But for now, we're stuck with this Jafar and his reign. I'm excited.
I like it.
Yeah.
I'll ping you on social
coming.
Media when we get that illusion card. Be like, there
it is.
Darn it. All right. Well, let's kind of wrap this thing up. We've been having so much fun. Last thoughts. What do you want to tell people who, they're listening to the show, they're interested in Lorcana, you're playing with your family, what's your elevator pitch for someone who's like, I'm interested, but I don't really know. I don't know if I want to, go to a game store. I don't know if my kids will like this. What's that elevator pitch to kind of push them into at least trying Disney Lorcana?
That's a good question. I mean, I think if you like any kind of game at all, card games, board games, anything like that, and if you are a fan of Disney, that definitely this is a game worth trying out, whether you get the starter decks or the single player decks. There's also the Illumineers Quest, which is like a co-op version. There's the Gateway. And to me, there's so many different ways that you can engage with this game that there's something for everyone. So you may not play the same way that somebody else does, but there's definitely an on-ramp and a way for everyone to find enjoyment with Disney Lorcana. And, come and check out my Instagram page. I'll help you learn how to play.
Well, yeah. Why don't you plug all your stuff again? Let people know who you are, where they can find you.
Sure. Yeah, I'm mostly over on Instagram. It's Rebekah Quests, Rebekah. So my name a little different, Rebekah Quests. And I'm on Instagram there. I'm also on Blue Sky and the other socials. And I hang around some different Disney Lorcana Discords. And yeah, definitely come find me, come follow along, and have lots of fun, and help, we'll all laugh and smile together, because we're here having fun playing with our Disney cards.
That's the best thing. And we'll definitely put links and show notes and all over our social media so people can connect with you and check out all of your awesome content. But thank you. Thank you for joining us. This was so much fun.
So much fun. Thanks for having me again. I really appreciate it. And it was tons of fun. Like you said, time flew by.
Yeah. Next time we'll have to talk about some of our favorite foods because that's a fun conversation.
Oh, there you go. Yes.
But, thank you, Rebekah, for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We will see everyone next time. Remember to play games and have fun.